Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a fascinating and honestly a pretty relentless internal battle that every single one of us faces daily. We're going to challenge the very foundation of how you make your day-to-day decisions. Whether it's figuring out how to respond to that incredibly frustrating email, deciding what to eat after a super long day, or just handling a sudden setback, we usually rely on these deeply ingrained internal signals. But today, we're going to tear down some of the biggest assumptions we make about those signals and explore a much more resilient framework for navigating life. Don't give too much value to your feelings. They're fleeting. Just let that sink in for a second. It completely challenges our everyday perspective, doesn't it? I mean, from a very young age, we're heavily conditioned to just trust our gut and follow our heart. We're taught to view our emotional state as this absolute, unbreakable truth about our reality. But what if that advice is actually, fundamentally flawed? What if our feelings aren't the ultimate compass we've been led to believe they are? What if they're actually a lot less reliable and leaning on them is literally holding us back? So let's get right into Section 1, the problem with feelings. It's crazy how often we just casually submit to how we feel in any given moment, right? We react, we behave, and we literally make massive life decisions based entirely on a temporary emotional state. But why is this such a big problem? Well, let's completely demystify the quote-unquote magic of feelings. They actually originate from some highly unstable sources. First up, external factors completely outside of our control. Someone cuts you off in traffic, your adrenaline spikes, and suddenly you're furious at the entire world. But that anger isn't an absolute truth about your life, it's just a localized reaction to a random event on the highway. Second, internal biological imbalances. Think about being hangry. You might feel completely disillusioned with your whole career or furious at a coworker, but actually, scratch that, your blood sugar just dropped and you literally just need a sandwich. And third, chemical imbalances. Surges of stress hormones like cortisol can totally warp your perception of reality, making small hurdles look like insurmountable mountains. So the absolute crucial point here is that your feelings are mostly just byproducts of biology and external variables. They aren't some mystical compass. They're just physical, chemical reactions happening in real time. This brings us to Section 2, the instant gratification trap. So what actually happens when we let these biological and chemical imbalances drive the bus every day? When we just chase whatever makes us feel good at that exact millisecond? The realization here is incredibly blunt. Submitting to feelings makes life difficult. Let's hold a mirror up for a second. Have you ever noticed that relying on these fleeting emotions makes us completely dependent on them? We constantly chase instant gratification. We hit snooze because we feel tired, we eat the junk food because we crave comfort, we send that angry text because we want immediate validation. And the majority of the time, the result is that we wake up a week, a month, or a year later feeling like life is just getting incredibly difficult and overwhelming. Relying on the temporary makes the permanent feel impassably hard. It creates this exhausting cycle where we're constantly putting out fires that we started ourselves simply because we felt like it in the moment. Now notice the stark contrast here. We've got a definitive choice between two very different paths. On one hand, the feeling-driven path. This is where we casually react and fall prey to instant gratification. It's the path of least resistance. And sure, it feels really good right now, but it slowly and inevitably compounds into a chaotic, stressful future. But on the other hand, we have the mind-driven path. This is where we step back, take a breath, and make rational decisions based on long-term goals, not short-term impulses. It requires your mind to actually be stronger than you're feeling. You have to consciously, deliberately veto your basic biology. The feeling-driven path leads straight into that trap of a difficult life we just talked about, while the rational thought of the mind-driven path, that offers us a reliable way out. It is the defining difference between being a passive passenger and the active driver in your own life. Moving on to Section 3. Escaping the victim mindset and regaining your autonomy. Here's a really tough pill to swallow. People who are dependent on their emotions often believe they are the absolute victim of external circumstances. Just let the gravity of that sink in. Because our feelings are driven by external factors totally out of our control. The weather, the economy, some rude comment from a stranger. Relying heavily on those feelings tricks us into falsely believing that we are helpless victims in our own lives. If a rainy day makes you inherently depressed and unproductive, then the rain is literally dictating your life's trajectory. If a harsh piece of feedback ruins your entire week, you've essentially handed the keys to your emotional well-being over to someone else. You start deeply believing that life is just something that happens to you, rather than realizing you have the autonomy to decide exactly how you're going to respond. And here is exactly how that plays out in practice. Giving away your power means relying way too much upon factors out of your control, rather than taking charge of what you can control.
It's a choice we make, often just because we completely lack the self-awareness that we're even doing it. In behavioral psychology, this concept is tied to what's called a locus of control. When you have an external locus of control, you're relying on the outside world to dictate your internal state. You've basically handed over all your personal power to circumstances you absolutely cannot change. But remember, choosing not to make a conscious decision is still a choice. When you default to your feelings, you're actively choosing to give your power away to the random chaos of the world. Taking charge means recognizing what is actually within your sphere of influence, your attitude, your daily effort, your response to adversity, and then ruthlessly focusing all of your mental energy right there.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, Mastering Your Mind. Let's look at the rational solution. We can walk right through these highly empowering steps to get you out of this trap. Step 1, cultivate self-awareness. Look, you have to realize you're in the trap first, right? You need to catch yourself in the precise moment of an emotional reaction and just pause. Acknowledge that you're feeling an impulse, but don't immediately act on it. Step 2, know when to start and stop. Most people don't even realize that starting anytime, anywhere, is completely in their hands. You can choose to stop reacting right now. You don't need a New Year's resolution or a Monday morning or the perfect, highly motivated mood to make a rational choice. You have the ultimate authority to hit the brakes on a negative emotional spiral in a fraction of a second. Step 3, take control of what is in your hands. Stop giving power to outside factors and start executing on the rational choices that belong to you. Shift your focus away from the chaotic external environment and dial in entirely on the actions, habits, and mindset that you can actively manage today.
Our mind has to be stronger than our feeling. This right here is the ultimate summary, the core thesis of our explainer today. If we want to make true, rational decisions, if we want to stop falling prey to whatever fleeting activities give us instant gratification, we absolutely must elevate the mind. We have to recognize feelings for the biological and chemical reactions they actually are, and deliberately let logic take the steering wheel. Now, to be absolutely clear, this isn't about suppressing your emotions or, turning into some cold, unfeeling robot. It's about observing those emotions without letting them blindly dictate your behavior. It's about building the mental muscle to say to yourself, I feel incredibly angry and frustrated right now, but I'm going to choose a productive response anyway.
So, what you should ultimately take away from all of this is a profound choice. Will your mind be stronger today? Will you give power to outside factors, or will you take the reins? Will you let a fleeting chemical imbalance dictate your destiny and make your life inherently difficult? Or are you going to take immediate, rational control of what is actually in your hands? The autonomy is sitting right there, just waiting for you to claim it. But the choice, that's entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your mind strong, and I'll see you next time.